Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for January 12th, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also here are Ralph Kohler, who's sharing his screen, and Simo Helston. So go ahead, Ralph.
We're taking a look at issue number 2928801, remove hard-coded restriction of file size formatted to fields named file size. I've prepared two instances, one without the patch applied and one with the patch applied. I've went through the steps to reproduce. Basically, how to set the issue up is you enable media and media library module. Then you add an integer number field. And then on the media type for image, under the field mapping, I'm going to quickly show types.
Right. Show me, don't tell me.
Yep, I realized while I was talking. Under file mapping, file size set to the field called num. And if you go back to content media, I've already uploaded a thumbnail, not a thumbnail, a file, an image. And as you can see, the file size, the integer value is automatically populated that field there. That's the baseline for that, for the steps to reproduce. And from there, we go now into the view media page list. And there, at the moment, we are on the instance without the patch applied. And the instruction is to add now a field, number, add and configure. And now on configure field media, we are currently there, select file size for formatter. And the views UI behaves inconsistently at this point. While it preserves the value of formatter selection, formatter settings will not be preserved. If you change 1000 marker to comma, at the moment it is at none, it will be none when revisited. Let's make it apply. If we go in there, it's again at none. And the view will continue to display the file size value as though the formatter was set to unformatted. No file size formatting is applied. And if we go over to the site with the patch applied, it's now called byte size and no options anymore available. If you apply, save, let's go back. As you can see, the number field is adjusted. Oh, I haven't noticed when I was testing. I'm again on the site without, let's say, comma, file size, apply, and oops, save. And if we go to content, media, yeah, there's no formatting applied. That's basically it. But I've considered the difference confusing, and therefore I've also asked on the Slack thread for someone familiar with the patch maybe to join, but there was no reply.
Okay, so let me see if I understand the point here. So this is about applying the formatter, the file size formatter, to a field that's not a file.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
So
basically the media image metadata or fields that are attached to that one. The
so
field, not fields.
in the example, you've just attached an integer field to the media, but it could be any other field. It could be a base field on the media, right? That's what you're saying?
No, I wanted to say to a media entity, basically, to a media type. Oops, I opened that one again. Oops, there we are. In a media type, for the image media type, a number field with a format of integer, with a file type of field type of number integer was added.
Right.
And that's the point that on the view you decide or set the formatting for that number field. In here.
What? Yeah, I can't see from there. What are the other formatter options? Yeah,
Default and unformatted.
yeah. So
And
that would be like for integer.
1 second, I go in with the patch applied. Yeah, there's byte size, default, and unformatted. So the same number of formatters available, just a rewording from file size to byte size.
Okay, so this is about a views formatter. Is that right?
Yeah, it looks
Or-
like, yeah.
So when you have a view that's not showing rendered entities, but showing fields, and you choose how to format a particular field in the view. And you're demonstrating with the view that comes with core that generates the media listing page, but it could also be some other view that you create. And there seems to be currently a bug that this formatter doesn't pay attention to the thousands separator. And when you try to change it, it doesn't take effect and it doesn't show up when you look at the view. So that seems like a bug. And if we're not going to respect that, then we shouldn't show it on the form. That seems pretty clear. So the patch is removing that. It's removing the option that it doesn't respect. So that makes sense. So what else is the patch doing? It's changing the formatter from file size to byte size or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
byte size. But one thing I don't understand, is the bug still in place and just hidden basically by removing the 1000 marker? Because basically, if you take a look here, with byte size, and there you get basically, is it
The decimal,
separator.
it's not a 1000 separator.
Yeah.
And also it's kilobytes, not bytes. So it's kind of a, if I would like to have a formatter for that one. If it says byte size, then kind of, I don't know what the like if somebody wants to have rounded up or something like that. So
Yeah.
kind of is that something that comes from elsewhere in core, rounding up to kilobytes or with 2 decimals? Did you have the same file in this other, the one that
It's
didn't,
identical.
and it had like more numbers, so that's rounded? Or is it just it happened?
11,538. Oops. 1 second.
Yeah, 11.27 is correct. If the kilo prefix means 2 to the 10th, if it means 1024 rather than 1000, then 11.27K is 2 decimal places, the same as 11538.
So is that one defined by the patch, or is it somewhere that comes from? Is it somehow manageable? Because it's kind of that's a fixed formatting. No, so replacing formatting that doesn't work with something.
I've just opened the patch and it's just changing the label more or less and removing one detail, and that's it.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, so it's rendering an integer with something that already exists, or
yeah.
So I think the new label is not a great choice, calling it byte size. If we're going to display it as kilobytes, if it's over 1024 or whatever the limit is. It does seem like an odd choice to apply, although I guess there could be use cases. You could be getting file sizes from a spreadsheet and entering them in your integer field, and then you do want to display them as kilobytes or megabytes rather than number of bytes. So I suppose there could be use cases for this. But I don't like calling it byte size.
Well, I'm also wondering which version it uses for ordering. Is it using the displayed version, or is it using the original value for ordering? So does it order 1 kilobyte before or after 2 bytes? Or so
you're talking about sort order?
Yeah, sort order, yeah.
I don't think that would be affected by a display formatter.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it definitely doesn't for dates.
right, that's a good comparison. You can format a date as a timestamp, or you can format it as month, day, year, and that's not going to affect how it gets sorted.
But in some cases, you might want to have, so if it's some like rendering something, if you're rendering like for maybe referencing a media, then yeah, well, you shouldn't try to anything rendered media. You shouldn't try to order it anyway. So you should take some field and then try to order it by that. Render taxonomy term in a view. That's something that might be. Yeah, let's not get into that. There might be some use cases where a rendered, like the display version, would be the correct one for sorting, but it's not something that it's maybe not an issue here.
So what is the specific usability question that was raised here? Why was it tagged? Or was it tagged for usability review, or did someone just mention it in Slack?
It's tagged.
1 second. Referring to comment number 9, I can see that this could be useful for other cases, but I think it should be reviewed by the usability team. This exposes a new formatter option for all integer fields, and for most, it won't make sense, especially not as file size. One option could be to change the label.
So the question is about if it's byte size for something that's maybe not a file. So integer field for something else that is not seen as a file.
Right, and since then, someone has changed the label from file size to byte size.
Yeah, so let's say somebody wants to make a list of internet connections, then they have some speed that's marked as integer, and somebody wants to format them so that it would be kilobytes and stuff like that. So then if it's called byte size, then this formatter would make sense. If it's called file size, it doesn't make sense for the connection speed. But connections actually are measured usually with different, but it's per second. But anyways, so in certain cases, there might be something that measured in bytes, but it's not files. So I think that's the question.
And I've added one example, just loaded up one other screenshot for megabyte size for comparison.
Yeah.
But the field isn't sortable.
You could make it sortable. That's a setting in views.
Byte size.
In the table
Yeah,
format for in the like main like
cancel here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then format, and is it in table or in settings?
I think it's in settings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Checkbox.
You forgot. Yeah.
Okay, so the specific usability question is what's called label, which is sort of what I noticed as you were demonstrating it.
Yep.
And I don't like byte size, but I can't think offhand. Is there a standard name for for this way of rounding a number? And it is specifically not just using the prefixes for kilo and mega, but it's kilobyte and megabyte. So
Hmm. And would it make sense to simply say size? That way it would be more generic. But also unspecific.
I think if we have byte size, then it's possible to expand it to bit size or k bits or something like that. So it's possible then to like to have different kinds of, so kind of, if it's in bytes, then it's something that kind of tells what's the basic measure. So it's kind of a, or it could be byte size or kind of byte size converted to kilobytes or megabytes. But that doesn't have a, can't think of a word for that.
hi, and Offer has just joined us, Offer Shaw. So Offer, we're looking at this issue that says that there are use cases where the file size formatter might be applied to an arbitrary integer field. So if you have file sizes, but they're not coming from files on your system, they're just coming from a spreadsheet and you've entered them into a number field, then you might want to use the KB and MB suffixes when formatting them, and format an integer as in this example is 11.27 KB or 1.93 MB. And then the question is what to call the formatter, which is currently called file size, but if you allow it to be applied to any integer field, then file size seems like the wrong label. So what should we call it?
Actually, I think the excess word is size. So it doesn't have to mean size. So it's just we convert integer to bytes and kilobytes. So we could just call it bytes and kilobytes. And of course it would have then mega and tera, but kind of a, basically the formatter is converting integer into bytes. So it doesn't have to mean size.
Okay. Offer, you're still muted. Do you have any questions about the context? About what question you're
No,
trying to
I
answer?
think
Okay.
it's clear.
Good. I was just wanted to check that you weren't having audio problems. Okay. Okay, so just call it bytes. That's interesting. I think we don't really have the option of adding description text here. It's one option in a select list. So we do have to think of something descriptive and short. So just bytes. That's interesting. And of course, it would show up the same when it is being applied to a file field. You know what happens if we just use our favorite search engine for inspiration, or ChatGPT if you like? I just search for file size. There's a Wikipedia article, there's a file size calculator. So in the Wikipedia page, it mentions typically file size is expressed in units of measurement based on the byte. By convention, file size units use either a metric prefix, as in megabyte and gigabyte, or a binary prefix, as in mebibyte and gigabyte. Whoa, those are not terms that are familiar to me.
I think if we want to make it precise, we could call it prefix bytes, but that doesn't mean a lot to a common user. So we have a prefix, and then we have the bytes. So kind of a when we talk about those kilo, mega, giga, we're talking about metric prefixes, and then we have the bytes that are displayed, like the integer is displayed in bytes with metric prefixes. So that's what we are doing. But kind of metric prefix bytes, it's something that sounds fairly difficult to understand when you're like, unless you have a certain background.
Right. Anyway, I'll share the Wikipedia page I'm looking at in the chat. So. And based on what I'm reading there, I'm sort of warming up to Simo's suggestion that we just call it bytes.
Or bytes with prefix or something like that. So if we want, but because it's not just bytes, but if it's bytes, then it's kind of a.
Or would it make sense to use the singular form byte formatter simply?
I think bytes. I think it's plural is better because it's hardly ever it's number 8. So that it's kind of a bytes. It kind of feels better.
Just put into the chat bytes and then in parentheses with prefix.
Yeah. I'd like to see that with prefix as a default option instead of 1000 separator. So it's kind of you could have prefix or like whatever kind of formatting for bytes you want, but it's not in this scope. So I think we could call it bytes, and then it could be expanded with like getting a detailed version, what kind of prefixes, and if you want to have just bytes, or if you want to have the one that's currently the default option or the only option. So if we call it bytes, then it could be detailed in another option. Like currently there is the 1000 separator, so there could be another choice for selecting how to format the bytes, but it would the basic formatting would be bytes. So we could stick with that now.
Yeah, I agree that one, this is out of scope for the current issue, but that two, there should be more options. So we should have a follow-up issue. So for one, I'm American and I always use a comma as the thousands separator and a dot as the decimal separator. But I'm aware that other people do it the other way around. And so if we're going to have what was it, 11.58 or whatever, we should have the option to use a comma as the decimal separator. And then perhaps some people would want the option to use metric prefixes. So 1,000, 1 million, rather than 1,024 and 1048576 as the prefixes. So those are reasonable options to add, but not in scope for this issue. So I would suggest that we go with something like bytes with prefix in the current issue, and then a follow-up issue could just call it bytes and give the options of not using any prefix or using metric-based prefixes or using binary prefixes, and also choose the decimal and thousand separators. Does that make sense?
Just one comment from my non-developer perspective, and also not a native speaker perspective. I have issues completely understanding what with prefix even means in that regard.
And I appreciate that point of view. And always when people say, "Oh, I don't want to come to this meeting because my English isn't so good," I say, "No, we want the people whose first language is not English, because that's a very valuable point of view in usability discussions." So you don't like with prefix.
No, I don't say I don't like it. I just wanted to point out that to get meaning into it is difficult to do, to understand what it actually implies. I have a problem with a prefix. For me, something is before bytes. So I mean, I see, for example, if byte mean in that example 15 bytes, for example, that something is prefixed to that 15. That is what I would understand.
Yeah, in German translation, would it be something like mit Vorsätze für Weisheiten?
Maybe I have it backwards. Maybe it should be bytes with suffix.
No, but the prefix is for the bytes, kilobytes. So it's kind of a, yeah, it's not clear.
It's a prefix on the suffix.
My head is spinning right now.
Yeah, and that, like, just to for the sake of record, the reason we can't just use normal suffix for this is that we need to divide the integer by 8 and then by kind of kilo and mega things. So normally we could just edit the suffix to whatever, but then because we changed the number, so it doesn't really, we can't, because it's also confusing because we have prefixes and suffixes in some other parts of the field views field configuration. So is it in style settings?
And let's also consider the option of continuing to call it file size.
Yeah, if we want to create problems, then we could ask file size on disk or file size in some other calculation method. So file sizes differ from on where it's stored. Also, now that's trying to find problems.
Ah,
But somehow I don't like byte size. So I would kind of, it's, for me it would sound easier if it would be size in bytes, actually.
Yep.
Size in bytes or shorter version bytes.
But with the shorter version, the context is missing. But I agree that size in bytes might be a considerable compromise from my perspective, compared to bytes with prefix, which is more abstract and confusing from my point of view.
I put another suggestion in the chat, bytes, and then in parentheses, KB, comma, MB, comma, dot, 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 close paren.
That contains also information.
Yeah.
It also shows it's a big K instead of small k, or how do you call it? Lowercase or uppercase k. So it's kind of also shows that.
That's a little bit long, I guess. It's probably a few characters longer than unformatted, but I don't think it's so long as to be problematic. Does that give you an idea what to expect?
Definitely better from my perspective. But one question, is it possible to, or is the scenario even possible to have an image that has a size of gigabytes? Otherwise, you could even strike the 3 dots and just use kilobyte and megabyte.
So if we're applying this to an integer field, then that becomes irrelevant, right? As long as we're applying it only to files, we can say, well, do we actually allow gigabyte files to be attached? But now that we're applying it to an arbitrary integer field, sure, whether or not we can attach large files to our Drupal site becomes irrelevant.
Do we have any other formatters that have that kind of a additional description?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, image size had at least, so it wasn't a formatter, but it had non-original image size. So there is related. So
Where?
image style, it has a none in parentheses original.
Okay.
So there, yeah, so there is a so there are like on similar forms there are select options with more details in parentheses. So in that case, I think that bytes in parentheses KB, comma MB, comma dot dot dot. That's kind of a fits in.
So it's not entirely new pattern.
Yeah.
So shall we go with this as a recommendation? Okay, Simo gives a thumbs up
Uh,
and Ralph gives a thumbs up. Offer, go ahead. Or you're raising your hand. Do you mean to do a thumbs up?
Exactly, on my phone. I meant to do a thumbs up.
Okay. And shall I leave the comment on this one? Or Ralph, do you want to, since you've already looked at the issue?
well, you can. Then I'll take a look at revisiting the issue we've talked before the meeting and try to come up with what the conclusion was there.
Okay, for the sake of the recording, why don't you just bring that issue up briefly?
Where it was. 1 second. Too many screens open. For the sake of the recording, in the meeting on the 15th of September, issue number 3386130, we've discussed the following issue number 2099099. If site is in maintenance mode, omit instruction to put site in maintenance mode in db update controller.php.
And at the time we discussed it, but we never left a comment on the issue. So we'll try to follow up on that. So we have almost 15 minutes left. But I don't think any of us have particular issues that we're ready to talk about, do we? So I'm thinking maybe we should just, well, either close the meeting early or do you want to spend a few minutes talking about what to do next week or in the next few weeks?
There might be one thing. already closed my sharing, but I've noticed there are two issues back from the 10.1 release cycle about moving around the block. And from that meta issue, reorganizing block items in the administration items, menu items, there are two issues still open. And at least one of them could use at least a discussion or further input. I post the link in the chat. I just ran into it after we've touched Layout Builder last week in Drupal Dojo Austin, as well as this week. And that one is still relevant, I suppose.
Okay, so let's see. Here's issues with usability meetings. The first one you mentioned, I think, was reorganizing block items in the admin menu.
Yep, that's the overarching.
So this is the meta issue 3318110. Yeah, and I would love to get back to that issue. I guess just briefly has to do with links in the admin menu, and we currently have block layout directly under structure, and this team was I think pretty strongly of the opinion that that should be moved under appearance. That block layout has to do with themes. And we were sort of derailed because there was this issue to do some usability testing and a card sorting exercise. And fortunately, that never led to any specific recommendations. So it got stalled there. So yes, that would be a good thing to talk about. And then the other thing, you just gave me this link in the chat. Issue number 3318558. Adjusting the block terminology. So is this part of the same meta issue?
Yep.
Or parent issue?
Yep.
Oh, and this is since we now talk about content blocks rather than custom blocks.
About time.
We have block types, and then I guess under content we have blocks, and we refer to these as content blocks, whereas we used to call them custom blocks. So this issue is to make the same change in Layout Builder where the screenshot shows create custom block.
Yeah, but the problem here is it's in the context of Layout Builder, and there you have also inline blocks, and all those concepts collide in that very form. So it's tricky. In the comments in that issue, I've added the current state and the open questions a few months back.
Okay.
And also the problem is in that sidebar, there are also the option to add fields instead of blocks. And yeah, it's tricky.
Okay, so those are definitely good things to talk about at the next meeting. And there's also ongoing work for the field UI. And I think some of that is getting close to the point where it needs further review. So those are things that we could talk about. And as always, it's best if one of us or someone else has a look at an issue before bringing it up in the meeting, because it avoids sort of wasting time as we try to understand the issue. So if any of us has time, let's look at some of those issues and be prepared to talk about them next week or the week after. Anything else you'd like to bring up before closing the meeting?
Not from my end.
Okay, then it's close the meeting just a few minutes early, but I'm never a fan of running out the time on a meeting just to follow the schedule. So thanks for coming, and I'll be here next week. Hope you can make it then.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
weekend.